Hi everyone, it is December 21, 2015, and this is another Emacs Hangout, which is basically an informal get-together where people can share their cool things they've added to their Emacs lately, or demonstrate a new package they've come across, ask questions, and do all sorts of other things. Normally there would be other people around, but we'll see if people will show up in the next couple of minutes. And yeah, in the meantime, let's see, Emacs news. Let me go open up my notes for things to talk about in case nobody else shows up. Hang on a second. Oops. Okay, so since the last Emacs chat, a lot of things, since the last Emacs Hangout, quite a few things have happened in the Emacs world. John Weekly recorded an Emacs chat video with me about how to help with Emacs. He also demonstrated interesting news features and org features that help him keep track of his workload as an Emacs maintainer. But the how to help with Emacs part, in that part, he focused on he asked people to help out with adding more tests to Emacs, writing more documentation or improving the documentation we already have, and taking a look at the bugs in the bug tracker and trying to reproduce them, because there have been so many bugs over the past couple of years, of course, and so we'd like to see which ones are still active and which ones can be reproduced. Fun packages, it's holiday season, so fireplace might be fun to break out at your next party. I don't know. Then you have packages like a combo, and there's this entire Reddit discussion about interesting and amusing Emacs things. And of course, there's been a lot of activity in Emacs Devel as well, talking about performance and testing, documentation of more obscure things like PKs, and the draft for the new Emacs website. Now, I see there are a couple of viewers tuned in. Since this is likely to be a very short and awkward Emacs Hangout if people do not join, because then it'll be me again talking to myself, which is very sad. Yeah, hop on in. There's a join link on the event page. I should put in a thingy. Alternatively, you will be able to join at a URL that I will figure out how to put on the screen again. Hang on a second. Let me just set up stuff that I've forgotten to set up. And also other places where we actually found the link to watch this. So, hang on a sec. Join Emacs. Okay, so that URL that's showing at the bottom of the screen should take you into it. But if that doesn't work, you can go to sashachua.com/emacs-hangout and click on the link that in the comment that I've posted there. So, cue the awkward waiting for other people to show up. It's kind of like one of those, have a party, set out food, don't really know whether people will come or not. But in case people do, then often these Emacs Hangouts are a great way to take a look at how other people are using Emacs, what's in their configuration, or just the shortcuts and things they do. I've been playing around with my configuration a lot more lately because it's sometimes you're just looking for all these little ways to optimize or to improve your workflow. So for example, sorry, someone's having technical issues joining the Hangout. Oh no. Okay. Maybe today's not a good internet day. This has happened before, where in the past there was like everyone had joined and they were somewhere else, and I was like not connected to the same thing. So I'm going to go refresh this browser page just in case actually everyone's already hanging out in a parallel universe. Okay, I'm back. Nope, I think I'm still by myself. Okay, So oh no, people are having technical issues joining. Yeah, today might be a weird internet day. Technology, right? Sometimes it doesn't quite work out the way we hope. Oh crap! Did I mess up? Hang on a sec. Let me see if I can fix that. Oh, embarrassing. Okay, wait. Wait. Okay. I set it up wrong. You know what? They changed this. They added this feature. Hang on a sec. Okay. That explains things. Change. Allow. Okay. Let's try this again. Okay. Sorry. We'll try joining now. Okay, so it turns out that I actually had it set up so that only people from sashashow.com could join, which was very silly. Technical issue. I think I fixed it. Could you please try joining now? How? Okay. All right. Don't you just love it when platforms change, behind you, and you're like, okay, now you do different things to set things up. Joseph, are you in now?
I think so. I felt bad seeing you by yourself.
I know.
Hopefully I don't have like a crazy echo. I have a headset on, but I don't know. My phone seems to like to echo everything in Hangouts.
This will work. And you might be able to bounce the button a little bit because there's a bit of echo.
Okay, maybe I'll just mute it. Hopefully somebody else will come along and I'll just listen.
Or I could just not talk when you're talking. Okay. All right. Now that there is at least one other person here. Introductions?
Come on, you guys. You need to join.
I know.
So anything interesting in Emacs happen in the last month with you?
Let's see. More Emacs news. Oh, and little scripts. More of these little shell scripts. Now that I'm on Linux again, I'm so happy. And so I've been integrating that with Emacs Debugging as well.
Cool. So what made you jump from Windows to Emacs or to Linux?
Emacs is an operating system, right?
Yeah.
It was just realizing that Krita had come sufficiently far along that I could use it for the kind of drawing that I like doing. So.
Oh, right. Yes.
It all works. How about you?
Emacs. Life is so busy. Let me think. Emacs stuff. I submitted a bug and had to do a little bit of work for that. So it was a bug with the clipboard mon. So it basically looks at the X clipboard and allows you to integrate it into the kill ring in Emacs. And so it's very nice. You can use Emacs as basically a clipboard manager. But unfortunately, with Emacs 25, under certain circumstances, it could lock up not only Emacs, but the whole window manager. And so I submitted that bug and was given some homework to do to try and find out what's causing it to lock up. So I'm not very, well versed with GDB. So it took me a little while to jump in there and figure out that there was an infinite loop that was occurring. Basically, I think it's related to the fact that clipboard mon has this timer where every 2 seconds it's checking something and the timeout expires and then you get into this kind of just this timeout issues.
That sounds complicated.
Yeah, it's especially considering I'm not as I said, not spending time in GDB very often, so it took me a little while. Oh, there we go.
People! Hi, Coding Quark.
Hi.
Awesome. Okay, both of you have echoes, but I think we might be able to manage this with mute. You're also getting a bit of audio feedback. But you're here, so I will take what I can get.
I'll mute my microphone unless I'm talking.
All right. Do you have earphones, Coding Quark?
Yes, I do.
That would be awesome. Okay. So it turns out that I messed up on setting up the Hangout because things changed behind my back. So I'm manually inviting people. The Emacs channel is a great place to ask about these things. Let me just invite new folks. Invite. Okay. Invited. Okay. More people invited. Yay. All right. Okay. So that it's not just me talking again. Do we want to do a quick round of introductions? So, hi, I'm Sasha. I have messed up setting this up today, but we are patiently working through it, thank goodness. And I'm based in Toronto, which is starting to get a little bit colder now. All right, next person. Devon, you're already unmuted, so would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Dhawan. I'm from India and I'm a web developer currently based. And that's about it.
Awesome. Zephyr, welcome. Would you like to go introduce yourself? I'm not sure if your audio works, but we will sort that out later. Okay. And Joe, you mentioned you. Sorry. Yes. More technical issues. Okay. All right. Okay. What do people want to talk about?
I recently managed to enable multiple email accounts with GNUs. That is a nice place.
Yeah, you mentioned you were setting up mail splitting as well, and multiple accounts.
Fourier helped me. He created all the work. I copied things from it and modified things to work. But it is always nice to use humans instead of web interfaces.
Let me try meeting Joseph. Okay, so would you like to tell us more about that?
Basically, I have written everything, but let's see. There is this package, SMTP mail multi, which is actually the reason we can do these things. But I have got a comment on the blog article saying that the approach I have taken is the hardest one, or harder than the built-in solution. So, not sure whether what I have written is the easiest way. But basically, this approach takes in your .auth.info accounts and parses it automatically and decides from header and sends it via that SMTP server.
That's
I find
interesting.
it easy, so maybe it is harder comparatively, but I don't know any easier way, so it is. There is no comparison for me.
Yeah, because I guess the other approach would have been to use GNU's posting styles or whatever, but then you'd have to configure it and keep it in sync. So if you can pull that information from auth.info, it makes so much more sense.
Right. I do think so. I mean, so Fourier has automated the whole stuff. The script will read our auth.info, parse everything on its own. We just have to tell it what ports to use for what.
Wow. Well, I won't ask you to demonstrate that now because auth.info tends to have rather sensitive information. But if you don't mind writing a blog post about that at some point, or maybe you already have, then that would be great to read.
About what? This multiple setup?
Mm-hmm. I
Yes,
think
I
you
have
might have
looked at it,
already.
yes, yesterday night, right?
Ah,
I just posted.
okay. I should go look
I
for
think
that then.
it makes news too, I think.
Oh, okay. All right. Things I can't remember in my panic at making sure this and the technical issues get sorted out. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that then.
Thank
Yeah, GNUs has become a lot of people have gotten quite interested in GNUs lately because of, I guess, John's demonstration of how he uses adaptive scoring and all these other nifty features. But of course, there are other mail clients in Emacs that are also quite powerful, so it's great to see people exploring those as well.
Right, right. I think what John was doing would take me a few more years to achieve, but whatever.
That's good. All right. Zephyr, do you want to give your audio a try to see whether you can speak up? I can mute on if there's feedback, or you can mute yourself if you're not talking. Oh no. Okay, so he's still sorting out his audio setup because of the I guess kernel reconfiguration or whatever. Yeah. So anyway, so these Emacs hangouts, I never really know what's going to happen or what people are going to talk about. It's really kind of, I guess, kind of just like people getting together for a really small meetup in a cafe somewhere, especially for people who don't have an Emacs meetup close to them. So if there's stuff to demonstrate, then that's great. If not, to just talk about whatever is on our minds or whatever we've been learning about Emacs lately.
I think I would be the only person in 50 kilometers radius around me who uses Emacs.
I'd be surprised by that. I know there are quite a few people who have a hard time with it with when I usually schedule these things because they're in India or wherever. But of course, India being very large, you might be actually right about this 50 kilometers thing. But yeah, there must be a better way of finding people who are interested in Emacs as well. Oh yeah, I should check the whatchamacallit, the chat to see what people are saying in case anyone needs me to repeat things. Okay, I'm only slightly confused. Anyway, there's a user groups page on whatchamacallit, on the Emacs wiki, but that requires someone to actually be organized enough to start a meetup not knowing whether other people will show up. I don't really know how else you'd find people who are in the same city or kind of like I know there are people in Toronto who use Emacs because they tend to say hi through my blog or through email or something like that. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's I guess most of the time I just hang out in the Emacs channel, and that's how I get to know other people who use Emacs.
No, I'm fine with this too. Hangouts works for me.
Yeah, I
So
just think,
basically, I post on Facebook
oh
because I
yeah,
have circles, right? So I post blog posts or ask outright if anyone is using Emacs or something. Everybody replies we are using Sublime or something.
mm. Or I guess if you look for a Linux or Unix group, you probably find a lot of people that use VI, but maybe you'll find some people who are stubborn and use Emacs anyway.
Right, right. A few of my friends are using Vine, and they
Mm.
hate me for using Emacs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that sounds promising audio-wise, Zephyr.
Yes, yes.
Awesome. That actually worked too.
Well, yeah, yeah. I've been having so many problems with my computer recently. I just upgraded my kernel, and I was a little bit of an idiot. I just hit the space bar a bunch of times. I don't know if you've ever made your kernel recently. There's so many new options and I just, it will automatically hit no. And so I think I broke something there, and I have to restart my computer. But the phone is fine in the interim.
Wow, the joys of kernel reconfiguration.
Yeah, yeah, it's something that you can kind of do. I don't know why I do it. It's it's just a habit,
Because you
I guess.
can.
Yeah, because you can, exactly.
Awesome. Okay, we were just talking about the challenge of finding people who are in the same area who use Emacs, and because it's not really something I guess that's obvious or uh, or you don't just like not a lot of critical mass in places. Do you know other people in your area who use Emacs?
Oh yeah, I mean, I actually live in a household. Everybody uses
Okay, everybody using Emacs in one house. All right.
email. Right.
Was it a requirement for being a roommate?
No, it's not a requirement. But, so there's a young lady who's doing a PhD. She uses email for some mathematical package. I actually, she finds it really useful. There's a programmer, of course. I mean, the rest of us are programmers. And yeah, I used to be a Vim user. I've been a Vim user since I was like 14, but then I really got satisfied with it about 3 or 4 years ago. But it's cool.
Mm-hmm. Is it possible for you to hold the phone a little bit closer
Oh,
for
right,
volume?
right.
That's
Sorry.
cool too. That's
Yeah.
where are you based?
I'm in San Francisco.
Okay, well in that case it should be really easy to find lots of Emacs geeks there. Vaguely remember there's some kind of meetup which should be a great place to exchange tips and ideas and all of that stuff too.
Right. I think that there's quite a few of them actually around here.
For Emacs?
Yeah, I don't know that for sure, but yeah, I think there's at least one or two.
Awesome though. Yeah.
Where are you based out of?
I'm in Toronto. There are, as I mentioned, there are actually a bunch of other Emacs geeks here, but I am nowhere near organized enough to go and organized or extroverted enough to go and set up physical meetups with like people who like can
Right.
show up in person and stuff.
Right. Yeah, I mean, San Francisco. There's so many technologists here that it seems inevitable. But somewhere like Toronto, I could see that being a challenge.
That's okay. I mean, I have bumped into other Emacs geeks at events, but I guess it's really just this idea of well, even for this one, right? So bit of a technical issue setting up this hangout, very embarrassing. And for a moment, I was worried that I would spend the next hour and a half. Well, I would probably cut off in about 15 minutes with talking to myself, until fortunately people took pity on me and actually joined. But you can imagine having that same kind of when you're starting a new meetup and showing up in person. Will other people show up? Will you awkwardly, sit at the cafe? How many people
Yeah.
are going to show up, etc.,
Right.
etc. So
Yeah, I could definitely see that being awkward.
I guess it's easier once you have like a mailing list and people are going to make this a regular habit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, once again, here it's not such an issue, but it would be a little bit tough if you go to and there's only like 2 or 3 other people. I guess you'd get to know them really well, but
Oh, could be. So, what's new in your Emacs life? What kind of things do you talk about with your housemates? And
well, this is a little embarrassing, but to be honest, like I just like copy everything you do. I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, but like uh, your GNU's configuration, for example, that definitely started. Uh, I I think that in some cases, like I'm about to place a demand on you that you have no requirement to adhere to or to follow up on, but it would be really cool if you could organize some of your files in such a way that like I guess like the programming aspects of it are not really So it can be more easily copy and paste. Yes.
Yeah, I guess my config, that big kind of org file that I have all those Emacs snippets in, it just accretes, like barnacles in a ship. So I don't really know how I'm going to like clean that up so much, but I guess every time you see another function that, if you copy some code and you run it and it complains about things not being defined, then at least you can search within that file just to find something else. What kinds of things would make config in general easier to copy?
I don't really know, and that makes it doubly embarrassing to ask you to do something that I couldn't really say how it could be done. I do remember, I'd say maybe a year ago or so, I was looking through, God, I forget what the feature is called, but it's where you get things all into different folders. You know what I mean? Like the filters.
Oh yeah?
On the basis of like the email address or so on.
Splitting.
You said, what was that?
I think you're referring to mail splitting?
Yes, exactly. There you go. That's exactly right. Splitting, and I remember I had a really hard time, getting it working from your config. I don't really recall what I did, but it's the little things. I think maybe it was an issue in relation to versions of Emacs that we were using. But perhaps it was something entirely.
Might be. I haven't done any mail splitting in years, so although the approach that John Wigley suggested in his conversation with me, where you do the splitting outside Emacs instead, so you don't have to wait for Gnu's to do all of that stuff for you, that does sound promising, and I might start doing that again at some point.
How is that done?
I think I don't remember the details, but someone has very, very nicely transcribed the entire thing. So if you look up the conversation with John Wigley, I think it was last week or the week before, I think he might go into some detail as to how he did it. But yeah, and a lot of it, isn't captured in the whatchamacallit, isn't captured in the configuration, right? It's workflow. It's people actually trying things out. Right now, my mail setup is very rudimentary because I've just slowly been moving back into this Linux type life. So I've got offline IMAP and Dovecot for IMAP, local IMAP, and GNUs. But I'm basically just working off either my inbox folder or my all mail folder, and going off there. Plus, of course, a couple of news groups off Gmail.
I see. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I actually also use Gmail for almost everything. I found that like RSS support is really patchy in GNUs, particularly for like Atom, like 2 and above.
Yeah.
And so I really wish there were some things about my Windows configuration I could do better about.
Okay, so people in Emacs reminded me that yes, actually, people have been posting things to Q&A, but it's mostly been like cows and the Hangout splits and stuff like that. Anyway, so yes, the Q&A stuff does work, and I can see that stuff happening. And if people do ask questions through that, I can pull that in here. Alternatively, people can post comments on the event page, and I will go and refresh periodically and look at that as well.
Yeah, you can't really see that sort of thing on the phone, but that's okay.
That's okay.
You're gonna have to excuse me for some moment. It is very cold outside.
That's cool.
I mean, we cannot see Zapper clearly either, so.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. We'll just deal with it somehow.
Yeah.
I was like, I got to the point where I was comfortable with the way that Hangouts kind of worked, and now everything is kind of different, and I'm learning. But hey, change is the only constant.
Oh, sorry.
What other things are people learning about or want to learn about in terms of Emacs?
My next work will be about org mode. Let's see if I can migrate from Asana to org mode.
That
You
should
know,
be interesting.
I actually wrote something for that. I should put it on GitHub. It's
Ooh.
funny you mentioned that.
What does it do?
It just migrates tasks from Asana to org mode.
Awesome.
That
So
is
even like the
cool.
subtasks for projects and stuff?
I don't actually recall. The Asana API, I wrote this about 6 months ago, and so I honestly kind of forget, but, gosh.
I'm looking forward to that then.
Yes, I'll put it on there right now. I got a lot of my time taken up by this Z3 thing. I wrote a major note, a mathematical package. So I hadn't had a chance to really like review things, and this was my first Melpa package just recently, and I was a little bit like embarrassed about putting, like my Asana code up there because I was just like barely working through ELIST. I didn't really feel like I knew the right way to do things, and so I didn't put it on GitHub. Meaning
Let me just go invite a couple more people because it looks like I still have messed up in terms of this thing. So, Howard,
Also,
yes,
it
of
says
course you want to
anyone
invite
link should
Howard.
be able to join.
I
Okay, I'm
know, but
sorry.
okay. So let me try that with a different link. Copy link address. Redirect. Change the redirect. Okay, let's see. So
That is
even
cool.
like, yay! Howard joined. Okay, all right. We're kind of in business. This is good.
Hmm.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Technical difficulties.
Oh my gosh. Let me go change the redirection just in case anyone happens to join late. I have
guys
no
hear me?
idea what's going on.
I had to take the original URL that you had, not the two others.
Really?
I had to do the same thing.
Okay, that's interesting.
I'm going
The one
to
that says
speak up
join
again. I
Emacs.
don't think you guys can hear me.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay. And no feedback. Great.
All right. Okay, now we can have a much less awkward hangout. Hangout.
Especially the silent ones.
So sorry I'm late. What are we chatting about?
So it turns out that Coding Quark is interested in migrating from Asana to org, and it just so happens that Zephyr has already done this in the past. Yay, randomly bumping into other people, right? So that's where we are at the moment.
So I've been playing around with something that's somewhat related to, I think, a talk that you gave, Howard, at the conference.
Which one?
The one where you you integrate code. I think it was with Babel. I might be confusing you with somebody else's talk, but I think it was about Babel or integrating code, or I'm trying to think of this one word that. Anyway, so I'll describe what I'm messing around with. It's polymode. So I'm writing papers, and it's really challenging to put, do all this R code and make the changes and then pop the figures back into the paper. So it's much nicer when you can have one document that integrates both the R code and the LaTeX. And so
Sure.
I'm using polymode. It's not quite ready yet, so there's lots of quirks, but I think it's quite an improvement on I think it was no web mode I was using in the past that comes with ESS, Emacs Speak Statistics. So that's
So
been.
have you thought about using actual org mode to do that kind of thing?
I have thought about it, yeah, and I think I do a little bit of that, but for actually doing the paper, I just don't think I have enough of a handle on it quite yet. Maybe in the future, but
Yeah, because getting all of these special LaTeX features in org mode is kind of possible. You can have like these dollar signs that identify the LaTeX code that you want. But in general, yeah, if you're really going to craft it and control it all, you may want to just stay in the LaTeX mode.
Yeah.
I find my things are so simple I don't need to. Little equations here and there are good enough.
Yeah. I guess it's you got to fix that right balance where you want to obfuscate things enough to make it easier for you, but then you don't want to be too far removed from the code, because if something goes wrong, then searching through generated files is can be challenging. So literate programming was the term that I was trying to come up with.
Yeah. I've been using it and loving it for years. Got some nice features, but yeah, most of it has been with org mode, just because you can. I don't know the poly mode, but with org mode you can execute little blocks that are in there, either in a session or not, and get the results back out, and then use those results in something else like variables.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way to like do sort of, sorry if I'm not being loud, to do sort of like defined functions in a spreadsheet in org mode? So if I was to make a function that like say like computes a Fibonacci of n, can you define that little table function in org mode?
Oh yeah, you can totally call Emacs list from org table formulas. Let me see if I can dig up an example. Is that sort of the thing that you're looking for?
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Or do you mean the other way?
I would prefer it to be inline, of course, but if the only way to do it is to reference an external Emacs function, then so be it.
Well, I mean, the org mode tables, down at the bottom, after the data, since it's all text, you can specify certain cells and certain cells have certain values that'll come out of a formula, and you can specify that. And there's a little mini language there, but it can also call out to elist functions, or you can actually reference other tables that are produced by other code blocks. So like you could have like a SQL block where you go out to a database, pull the data, it comes into a table, you use a column of that and in something else for further processing.
Right.
Is that kind of what you were thinking?
It kind of is. As I recall, the functionality was very minimal in the existing table language.
Oh, it is. It's very limited. And so, yeah, if you want anything interesting, you go out of that and just call list.
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, I guess that's how it's done. Remember that.
Yeah, and I kind of like that approach. Something simple can be done right then, but you have the ability to call something else that's more powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think I saw a post that was on Reddit or Hacker News or something. It was a reference to an older post, but somebody asked, if you could start over again for people that have been using Emacs for a long time, what are kind of the key features or the most important things that you learned? And I think in the last few months I've begun using one feature that I wish I'd looked into much earlier, and that's e-debug. It's so helpful when something's screwed up and you can actually jump in there and see what's going on. So it's been pretty fruitful in terms of fixing little issues with different packages and yeah.
And now you're going to demonstrate it, right?
But before that demonstration, I'm going to sneak in something. We'll come back to eDebug because eDebug is super awesome and everybody should use it when working with Emacs Lisp. I just want to do a quick demo of the that Emacs Lisp, calling it in the table formula. So here you see my column 4 is is the result of my compare times of column 3 and column 2.
Oh, you are amazing, Sasha. Thank you so much.
And the my compare times is basically this thing over here where it just takes the 2 parameters, which are automatically sorted out, and by the table formula, and I use the org HHMM string to minutes function to convert that into minutes and do stuff.
Yeah, that's more or less what I was looking for. Awesome.
Okay, all right. Okay, so back to Edebug, which is awesome.
Unfortunately, I don't think you'd want to anyway, but I can't demo it because the Hangouts plugin isn't available for the OS that I'm using, so I'm on my Android phone. So I don't think I can. I
can probably bring up a demo of that one because I was just using it to look at some of the org mode things that I'm trying to change. So I've been working on changing org mode protocol to deal with URL type key equals value instead of the much older kind of like rather arbitrary syntax it used to have before. And the way that I started figuring out how it worked was a combination of using ERT and Edebug. So ERT, Emacs regression testing, something, anyway, testing framework, lets you define stuff. And so I have this test over here that does stuff, I guess. And then I had my org protocol capture, which I'll show you how Edebug works with it. A second. So, org protocol capture. Org protocol capture. Well, okay, so I have this function here. If I do a control U, control meta X, which is also the same as meta X, edebug defun, then it instruments it for debugging. And what I can then do is I can say ERT, and I run that test that I had previously defined, and it goes into this and it pauses as soon as it starts the function. So here I can press space to go evaluate the next expression, and I can press I if I want to go into that or protocol do capture, which is doing actually all the heavy lifting here, and debug that one. So here I can again press space to keep evaluating, and you'll notice that in the mini buffer it shows you the results of expressions as it does that. And you can type E to evaluate an expression, and here I can type info again to see in the mini buffer what was passed to it. So the value of info. That's basically edebug. You can press other characters like G to will just continue onwards, or O will go to the outer expression and things like that. But it's super, super helpful for even just understanding what code does.
in question mark just to bring up all the bindings in a little pop-up window.
Like so. And the other thing that I often use it for is I often press H to kind of run it until a certain point. So that's another helpful little thing. You can set breakpoints here and all that stuff as well, but I actually don't really remember how to use them. I just use H to jump to a specific location. So, edebug.
And what's the, do you have to do any special instrumentation, you said?
Just the edebug defun on the function that you want to debug, to step through, and then if you want to, if you notice something else is going to get called, you can always press I to go into that function while you're debugging, and you can step through that as well. So I will press G to keep on going, and when you're sick and tired of it already, like when you're happy with how things work, just like evaluate the defun again. So eval defun, for example, and that gets rid of the instrumentation for that function, and you're off to the races.
That is neat.
Also, ERT is super helpful when you're doing this, because that way you can just keep running the test again and again.
Impressive that you could kick off the demo on such short notice.
Well, I was fighting with it earlier because as I mentioned, I wanted to get like new style links, kind of this, you know, I I've been playing around with KDE, whatever the new KDE is, and it was giving me errors in the old style of org protocol links. So now I have this one instead.
I recently discovered these org protocol features from your, I think it was from your blog, Sasha. So I use Conqueror, and I just hit a key binding in Conqueror, and some information about the page that I'm on, usually just the URL, pops up into an org mode buffer. So it's very handy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same here. I now keep all my bookmarks in org mode because it's the little push that you need.
It's so much easier to organize them too, if you have them in org instead of like sometimes browsers are like, okay, how do I make sense of this? And
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a total hassle to do it in any browser that exists today because it's so much better.
Password management in the browser is a little unreliable at times. So I ended up just using a GPG encrypted file and store all my in an org file, and just store them all there, and have like a key binding in Conqueror that makes it easier to deal with passwords.
wow, that sounds interesting. So it'll look up the appropriate site.
Not quite. I sort of had that working, but that's not. I haven't spent enough time with it. Basically, there's a lot of manual parts to it, but I still prefer it to storing the passwords into the buffers in the browser.
I can see how that would work. Like if you defined your own org protocol handler, right? And it takes in the current URL, like the way that org store link does it, and then it maybe kind of simplifies the URL or runs through your headlines and finds a matching one, and then it uses kill new or whatever thing you can do to get your X clipboard or whatever clipboard you're using synchronized. Then it becomes pastable in your browser. Yeah, so different ways to do things. I had not considered that use case before.
Just out of curiosity, I've tried to configure GPG with views for some time, and I've never really managed. Like, I can copy things off the internet, of course, but like, what is the difference between EPA or EPG, or EPA 2015, 2000? So,
I have no idea. Does anyone know the differences between those various new PG things?
I didn't quite catch that.
Okay, can you repeat your question a little closer to the phone?
Sure. Sorry about that. Yeah, so there are a number of packages, or maybe modules, in Emacs. Then they're named things like EPG 2015 and EPA list, and then EPG 2009, perhaps. I don't remember. And they all seem to have slightly different pieces of functionality. So, for example, I remember setting my EPA key as like my email and not being able to sign messages, But then I did it with EPG 2015, and it worked fine. And I was just curious. I couldn't really find any information on the internet about what the differences between these were, and the top of the modules aren't very clear as well.
Yeah, it's a easy PGP interface, and yeah, it's been built into Emacs for quite some time. So yeah, it may take a little bit to kind of go back to earlier stuff when it was initially discussed.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I've just been using just the standard EPG, it seemed to be working well enough for me. I haven't heard anything else about any updates to it that are other, external packages.
They could be components of it as well. I mean, the EPG 2015 seems like some set of like cryptographic suites, perhaps, but I don't really know. And I was just wondering. It sounds like your answer is pretty definitive.
Yeah, yeah. If you want, I can point you to how I got it working. But yeah, like I say, I haven't seen any updates that haven't been built into Emacs.
Yeah, I ended up getting it working like I said, but it was just a hassle to find out information about it. And I actually emailed the guy who's listed as the maintainer, and he said, "Oh no, you need to email this other guy." And so I emailed this other guy, and he says, "No, no, no. Actually, I'm not the maintainer anymore either. You need to email this other guy." And this other guy said, "Oh, there actually is no maintainer.
Oh.
Just email like the mailing list." And I didn't.
Sounds like you need to pick this up then.
Maybe so.
I haven't done anything more complicated than just store things in auth-info GPG, and stuff seems to work, but I'm probably missing. Oh, and I've been trying to figure out how to get my org, like whatever org.gpg, to just automatically be encrypted to myself and set up the GPG agent and all of that stuff. Hasn't happened yet, but I will get to that eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah, I haven't configured it nearly as much as it can be, I'm sure, but if there was just better documentation for this sort of thing, it would be helpful to a lot of people. But I would say it's not really very kind of me to ask for documentation when I myself provide it.
Yeah, it's like anything that's open source. It's hit and miss when it comes to docs.
Right.
Well, maybe someone will write a blog post, or still pool our notes together and, yeah, I don't know, update the Emacs wiki or something like that.
So I have, I think I mentioned this to you, Sasha, but I have started a local PDX Emacs hackers group. And one thing that we did last time was we decided to do a workshop on macros. And the comment about is there something, that you do a little differently, really understanding and being able to manipulate macros seems to be really quite helpful. So I went back through the documentation 2 more times and pulled out everything and created this little I don't know, I'm calling it a workshop template kind of thing. But the idea is that each person could just kind of walk through, follow the instructions, do things like open up a block has some examples, and then you just kind of follow along. And so by the end of it, you're editing and manipulating all sorts of keyboard macros. I seem to find that quite useful.
That looks like an excellent, it's like even a self-paced tutorial. Are you sharing it anywhere yet?
Yeah, it's all up on the PDX Emacs Hackers GitHub account.
Emacs Hackers, I have to go find that and link it up.
Oh, I'll paste it in the channel.
Ooh, hey, even better. That's great. So,
but I'm kind of curious about a lot of making tutorials that are more interactive like this, with some examples. You pull them off into an org mode buffer like this. You can then actually just kind of walk through the instruction set and, try it out. And so each thing just builds on each other. And there's like my favorite example here is the numbering feature in macros, where each time you run a macro, you can insert an incremental number. And so the example that I've got here is 12 Days of Christmas, where the macro walks back up and puts the number in front of each one.
Wow.
That would be awesome if you shared that. I actually had to install a piece of evil to do that myself. And for like the incremental numbering in a macro. And maybe that's just because I had used Vim in the past, and so I already knew how to do it. But knowing how to do it in Emacs itself would be
Yeah, so you know, practicing each one of these kind of features of macros can be, quite helpful because um, I mean, the macro system is such that once you define them, it just goes in a ring, so you never lose any of them. And then you can name them or bind them to keystrokes and keep using them. And, there was an essay that I read this morning that was talking about, sometimes we think about doing a regular expression to do some manipulation, but, do we ever get it right the first time? And, that abstract approach to coming up with everything that needs to happen, while it could be useful and good if you get the first time, sometimes it just is not the way you can just get shit done. And so making a macro just means you can just blast through it and it's like, okay, it's done, it works, let's just keep on going.
It's nice because you get that you're seeing it work either line by line, or you see it when it runs into an error, and then you can fix it and tweak it and go forward. So that is very helpful.
And I notice that each time I make a macro, often there's a little mistake deep buried into it. And the fact that you can just edit a macro that you've previously defined so easily, it's like, yeah, I need to level up on this.
Which actually I have never done, so I'm looking forward to reading that fixing macros section that in this document that you will post the link to, or have posted.
I promise I will.
Yeah. In fact, I hardly ever use actually, I've never used the incrementing feature either, because I've only just relied on the fact that you can store numbers in registers and increment registers instead. So I just insert the register.
I think that's actually
the
how
macro handles it too, so might as well.
If you're feeling lazy too, you can always save a macro and bind it to a key and run it regularly.
Yeah.
Which is also helpful when you don't feel like writing the Lisp. Or I also use the counters fairly regularly because I have to edit these long boring files that list genetic sequences, and often you want to label the columns of the sequence, and so it would be very, the quick way to do that is just run a macro where you go along every certain number of characters for a section of the gene, and you can label it. And sometimes these files are like thousands of lines long, so it makes life a lot easier if you can just run a macro with a counter to label them all.
That's awesome.
Out of curiosity, what do you do, Joseph?
I'm a graduate student, and I work with models that basically work with DNA. So I use these files all the time.
That's cool. Are you a biologist or?
My degree, when I get it, will be in statistics.
Well, good luck. I mean, graduate school is always
Thanks,
really
I need
tough.
it.
Yeah, keep in there, man.
So
Yeah, I flunked at statistics, when I was in bioinformatics, graduating bioinformatics. I flunked at statistics. I couldn't get a hang of it.
Yeah.
It's a great thing that this guy is doing.
So other things that are super powerful. We've talked about edebug, we've talked about keyboard macros. What other sorts of things do, I guess, newbies not run across until years later when they think, oh, darn, I should have known about this all this time?
I think another one that I skipped over the first few times reading the manual was jumping around by S expressions. Because it's like, oh, it's kind of a little confusing, down and up and forward and all these other things that, but man, once you play with those for a while and you get the hang of it, it's like, man, you can really just kind of position it exactly where you want. And especially when you're adding that to keyboard macros and par edit, you can really do some amazing manipulation pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I guess in general, not just using the cursors for navigation, which people coming from other editors are more used to, but using things like iSearch and maybe AV or AceJump or similar tools to navigate very quickly, and then starting to think, all right, if I'm going to do this as a macro, how do I do it in a flexible way so that it adapts to the differences in each line or each instance?
Yeah, and on the topic of navigating by S expressions, especially the like go into an S expression, go out, or slurp and barf. At least that's what it's called in smart parens, where you can basically take something and like expand the S expression to take in the new thing. You're really you don't like it doesn't even feel like editing text anymore. It really feels like, well, just this is what I want. Just move a thing in, and it's so much more powerful than like, okay, go forward, then delete the parenthesis, then go to the next thing. It's just grab one more thing, throw it in. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones right now has been the, so I'm editing a lot of Clojure, and in Clojure there's this macro where you can just take some data and you thread it in between and have it call a function, and then the next function takes the output from that one, and on and on. And so you end up with a nice list. Well, you get down to the end and it's like, oh, I need to add or move something around, and the control meta keys that normally you use to kind of move around by S expression, I just kind of saw that you can do a control meta T to transpose those, and it keeps all the parentheses correctly, and it's like, oh, this is going to be very helpful. Things you skip over the first time you read it.
So I'm still pretty new with like ParEdit and smart parens. I try and use it for a little while, but I tend to, after like 15, 20 minutes, just turn it off and go back to I think it's fundamental mode. So I guess my question is, which should I spend more effort on, smart parens or ParEdit?
What language are you using?
Mostly Emacs Lisp.
Yeah, I can't speak to smart parens too much. I use smart parens for Ruby code, just because it kind of understands the concept of non-parenthesis kind of blocks. But I use ParEdit in my Lisp and closures and that sort of thing. But I think bindings are exactly the same between the two modes. I haven't noticed a difference.
Which part of it drives you crazy enough to turn it off after 15 minutes?
Well, there could be a lot.
No. Sometimes it's a matter of like getting used to not using Control K, or not not backspacing over things, or whatever, or knowing little workarounds, and then that allows you to focus on and just getting used to one or two concepts at a time, which definitely helps with learning either smart parens or ParEdit.
I don't know if there's one thing in particular. It's just I don't know how to do a certain thing that I want to do, and I'm kind of in a rush and don't have time to learn. So it's mostly just my laziness at the moment, or my lack of free time to actually learn something new.
Yeah. What I found
the same
helpful.
is with me. Yes, this is the same thing I am also facing. When I am coding, I do not have time to look through the manuals and everything, and I just go whatever it is doing and try to figure out what logic it is applying while using smart parents, and let everything go, and I will just backspace everything and see if that works.
So what I found helpful, particularly for smart parents or ParEdit, was just focusing on just the slurping and barfing as kind of as a beginning step. And I actually couldn't wrap my mind around it until I fiddled with my key bindings and then started thinking about it as, okay, if I control right, then it's kind of like dragging the right parenthesis a little further out or something like that. Anyway, so kind of just the tiniest key binding kind of concept that you can deal with. And then as for the I'm in a rush and I don't have the time to figure this out, I guess that's where some intentional Emacs yak shaving can help, where you're saying, okay, I'm not in a rush at the moment, but I do want to play around with this thing, so let me do it in a nice, non-pressured practice sort of way, so that when I need it, it'll be more of a habit.
Yeah, my mantra has always been learn your tool before you need it. Otherwise, it's not a tool.
Words of wisdom.
Go and prosper.
So yeah, I'm familiar. I've been using Emacs long enough to know that investing a bit of time will probably pay off, X fold, where X is a large number, and the near future, it's just,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
life sometimes gets in the way.
Oh, of course. But if you think something's going to be useful, yeah, learn it first. And yeah, I think Sasha's got a whole metric shit ton of stuff on how to learn this stuff and practice it beforehand. Actually, what I want out of you, Sasha, is about details about how I can do some nifty flashcards.
Oh,
There is a so someone wrote well, you know him, Sven Magnars, made a very nice refactoring tool for Clojure. And there is a long list of these things. And of course, they're all on single keys. And if you got the keys down, you can really start to maneuver things around. I don't know if you've seen his zombie little project going on, but you watch his videos and it's like, he's really quite quick at it. So there's a few I know, but I need to memorize the rest. So I'm looking for some flashcard thing. I was wondering what you recommend.
well, org-drill is pretty flexible that way. You could probably use that. Or naturally org mode has a flashcard thing called org-drill. And then if you want to quickly generate lots of flashcards for org-drill from a table, so for example, you might have a table where the first column describes the operation you want to do, and the second column has the key binding, or at least a text description of the key binding. Then there's org table drill or org drill table, one of those things. I can't remember what it's called. But actually, what you said reminds me a little bit of something called KeyWiz. Let me just double check that I'm not getting confused with there is something that like quizzes you on key bindings, but I think it might actually just quiz you in all key bindings. It might take a little bit of fiddling if you want to just focus on a bit. I would imagine that if you happen to have either text descriptions or better yet, maybe an animated GIF or some other like, before and after sort of thing, that gives, and then you can quiz yourself on the key binding for it. Then that might be really cool. And you can probably pull that off with org drill.
The org drill table, that package, or is this?
Yeah. So org drill table is just a convenient way to generate lots of org drill flashcards. But if you're adding them like one at a time and you want to like flesh them out with more details, then org drill by itself will let you do spaced repetition. So the basic idea is it'll show you a flashcard and you tell it whether you found that really easy or really hard or completely forgot it, and then based on that it will remind you. Like if it was super easy, it might remind you in a couple of days. But if it was really hard, then it will drill you on that more often.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much. I will look into this.
And the other approach is, kind of having a post-it note or an index card with just a couple of key bindings.
That's all. That's what I do. But when you have this, it's a little hard.
Yeah. So KeyWiz, KeyWiz is apparently it's an Emacs key sequence quiz, which quizzes you on your current key bindings. It shows you the name of the command in the doc string, and you actually have to type in the correct key sequence. There is a thing.
That's awesome.
Let me paste the link in the chat.
So has anybody else noticed when somebody asks you about key bindings and you're not actually physically in front of your keyboard and your fingers aren't on the keys, that some part, it's like playing a musical instrument. If you start thinking about the notes, then you turn off one part of your brain and sort of a more conscious part kicks in. But if you just kind of let go, I find like my fingers are on the keyboard, then the key bindings just come. But if somebody asks me, then it's a lot harder.
You have to kind of think it's a the thing over here. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I just had to tell a friend of mine who's learning Emacs the other day. what the key binding was, and I literally just like had to put my fingers down on like a piece of paper to think like, okay, what key is there? Okay, so it's actually Control C, Control E. Oh, and then it's H. Oh, it's that one. And
That's
I
X.
had no idea.
I hear you. I actually end up just telling people what the MetaX version is, the full command name. And then, of course, if they're in the new Emacs and they haven't set up either IDO or Helm yet, we get that sorted out first, because otherwise it's crazy, right? But part of it is because I have a hard time remembering sometimes what my key bindings are versus what the standard key bindings are. So I'm like, oh yeah, you just do this. And of course, they don't have the config for it yet.
Well, I promised that I would make dinner tonight, and I have no idea what I'm going to do. So I'm gonna probably take off and try and think about how to cook in 15 minutes. This
Thank
was
you.
awesome, guys. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thanks for dropping by and rescuing us from awkward Sasha talking to herself, which is good. Yes. See you again sometime.
Take care.
I actually have a question. You were talking about ERT before, and I've tried it a very little bit. And I was kind of wondering if there are, I guess, two things. One, if there's like best practices. Do you store the test in the same file, a different file? Because I feel like a lot of things I want to test are pretty small, so it seems weird to make a different file. But I don't know what people do about it.
Have you seen Exorcism.io yet?
I have not.
So Exorcism.io is a bunch of puzzles for basically various languages. And then after you've completed them, then you can share them and look at other people. But they have an eLisp one, and it's all essentially all the puzzles are a bunch of tests written in ERT, and then you just write the function that answers it. And it might get you kind of familiar with the whole process and how to run it and all that sort of thing without having to craft it yourself.
For my config, I tend to, like, if I'm testing a short function that's part of my config, and I actually will go ahead and write a test for it, then I'll put the test close to the function itself. That way, as I'm changing things, I can just change both, and I don't have to save in two places. What I'm seeing in larger packages is once they get to, certainly once they get to several files, then usually they'll have the test defined as a separate file and maybe in a test directory, so they can run all the tests in one go easily. But yeah, if it's your personal config, or if you've just got a package that's one file, you can certainly put it in there too.
And one other option is if it's an org mode, you can have your eLisp in one block and your tests in another, and you just don't tangle that out, and you still run it.
Literate everything.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you get to the point where you're defining your test data and your expected output in an org mode table.
Just everything's there, then, yeah.
Well, everything's there and everything's pretty.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. Yeah, some of the things I've been wanting to do is like, so right now all my configuration files are all in an org mode table, well, quite a few of them, and rendered out. And I've been kind of using use package. And what I'd like to do is just kind of put use package in one of the kind of blocks. That way I don't have to keep typing use package. I can just define it and have it put inside. Yeah.
That might be interesting. It's a macro, but maybe there's a way to do that.
But if it was tangled out, I don't know. I still haven't quite thought about what would be nice, but it would be clever to kind of create those kind of domain-specific blocks for org mode. A DSB, if you will.
Cool. But yeah, tests turned out to be really helpful. Surprise! Wow.
Yeah, it's ultimate jack shaving there.
I guess also on your question, Sasha, from before of what things were really powerful that we didn't know about, narrowing is super cool. And basically narrowing is like you have a long file with a bunch of code in it, and you're like, well, I'm only looking at this one thing, so I want to keep the file the same. I don't want to delete things, but just only show me this part. And it's really neat because then, like, you know, I find myself, if I jump around, I'm still in the part I care about. I can't accidentally get off, you know, way off to a different part of the file. You know, I'm still in that section I highlighted, or that defun or whatever. And you can search through it, and it only works on that part of the file. And it's really cool also for focusing, so you don't see other stuff and get distracted like I do.
Yeah,
Or
I
if
mean,
you want to do a search and replace, and you want to verify the first couple, you do a query search and replace or query regex replace, and you want to confirm what you're replacing is right. And then once after the first one or two, and you see that it's working out, you just hit the exclamation point. And if you're narrowed down to only the section you care about, it can make things a lot less tedious.
Yeah. I like that with key binding, that just copies the text for the entire buffer and puts that in the clipboard, because I often work with JavaScript, and so I like narrowing down to just the function plus maybe something that runs the function or prints out the output or whatever, just a little quick test. And that way, when I'm narrowed down to that function, I can just hit my key binding to copy everything, switch to Chrome, for example, and go into the developer console and paste that, and not have to worry about running all the other stuff that I might have in the file.
yeah, once upon a time, when a lot of the commands did not work with the active region, you kind of had to narrow everything down. But now you could, you know, also just kind of select things and then run your regular expression. It'll just work inside that. But yeah, that's where a lot of that came from.
I stumbled upon narrowing and I didn't know what just happened, so I was afraid where my code just went, and then
Yeah, that's why it's turned off by default, and in later versions. But yeah, one of my favorite ones is just in an org mode file to narrow based on the section.
Yeah.
Has the same interface as Control X N, and then you just hit S, and it just kind of do it, Sasha. Do it right now.
So actually, what I want to show is that you can do this with speed commands. In my case, I have N, capital N, I think, is a speed command for narrow the subtree. So here I press Shift N, and it narrows to that subtree, which is fun.
Nice.
Which means it's all like focused on that, and I don't end up messing up
You
other
added
stuff.
it as a special thing on just the header, huh?
Yeah. This is what the speed commands are for. So capital N for me narrows, capital W for me small w for me. Now, one of these things. Maybe it's just Control X and W. Anyway, so the way that works is use your speed commands. All right. So in order to do this, you need. Okay. So here's what I've got here, and it's got org speed commands user, capital N narrow the subtree, org narrow the subtree. And the other thing that you need to have is use speed commands. Here you are. So you can set it to T, or you can set it to a function which tells you, lets you do it on lists. Oh yeah, I have this working for lists too. Let me see if that still works. Let's see if this works here. Hello world. This world here. Let's see if that works. No, that one doesn't narrow. It only narrows to the subtree. Okay. Anyway, so the basic idea is you have org use speed commands. You set it to a non-nil value, and then you also have your thing that adds a speed command that narrows to the subtree, and then you can use capital N in this case to narrow to the subtree when you're at the heading of an org subtree thing. Anyway, so that's a little shortcut I have for org and narrowing. May not have made sense to other people, but anyway, it's there.
Oh, it made complete sense. It looks very helpful. I'll definitely check it out.
Speed commands, so helpful. I think speed commands might also work in the agenda mode. I could be wrong, but it seems likely. So then you could use other speed commands, I think like T are used for marking a task, so changing a task status, and X marks it as done, and so forth.
So another thing that I think is worth spending a bit of time to optimize is not only switching to or getting to the text that you're interested in, but also switching between buffers. And I know there's a lot of packages and things like that. I'm curious what everyone does to kind of optimize getting between buffers.
Switch window. I use switch window package.
One thing that I found helpful is iBuffer. You can organize all the open buffers into like GNU style topics. I find that's kind of helpful for organizing your buffers and seeing what's open and getting to them quickly. I've also written some really simple functions to basically narrow down to buffers based on major modes. So I do like a prefix key, and then if I hit O, then it only shows me like the org mode buffers, or control B R, and it only shows me R buffers, that sort of thing.
Right, I saw that in Steve Purcell's repo, and so he already has prepared his starter kit to show us the what we call the sorted buffers in iBuffer. So I'm kind of used to it right now.
That sounds like something that'd be fun to try. I've only just started getting used to the fact that in Helm, if you switch buffers, it shows you the list of buffers, but you can select multiple buffers and kill them all at once or whatever. I think it was like space or control space to start selecting things. This is kind of the micro habit that I'm working on picking up now.
The actions in Helm are very powerful. I'm just, feel like I'm scratching the surface there, but yeah, you could even delete files. I think it's meta capital D.
Yeah, same binding for deleting buffers. But I guess you would be in the find file mode instead. Like if you would be in find file instead of switch buffer, and then deletion would work the way it works. There's just so many things, right? So many ways and so many tips for doing things better.
I've gotten on top of a so-called Heisenbug, I guess you could call it. So Helm, I really like Helm, but I had this really annoying thing happening where 1 out of 20 or 30 times, probably even a bit less than that, where I'd bring up a Helm buffer like switch buffers, and it wouldn't show the actual options or possibilities. Like it wouldn't list any of the buffers, so I'd have to Control G and then Control XB again, and all the lists would show up properly. Well, searching around, apparently there's some issue with running certain clipboard managers in X. So
wow.
I had a fork of something called Parcelite. And anyway, just turning off clip it was the one I was using, and Helm just suddenly stopped doing this really annoying thing. So yeah, I was very happy to have figured that one out, or discovered it, I should say.
That sounds so weird.
Yes. Something that I never, ever, ever would have thought of as a possibility until I found that somebody else, searching through the dark corners of the web, found somebody else posted something about it.
Well, that's a point in favor of kind of either blogging or posting on Emacs Stack Exchange or writing somewhere, a mailing list or whatever, about weird things you're encountering and maybe some hypotheses about what's going on. But yeah, don't know who it'll help years down the road. Well, we're getting to 10:30 or so, and I think all the tension from probably maybe the second most technical issue plagued Emacs Hangout we've had ever. It's kind of like, okay, I think now is a good time to go and relax and de-stress. But thank you so much for being patient and dealing with all of this stuff.
Fun.
We did manage to share interesting tips, including quite a few that I will go and follow up on. It'll take me a while to come up with timestamps because I was kind of freaked out during the first quarter or so, and so I have like no notes for those, and I have to go listen to everything again. But yeah, thank you for joining and helping make this happen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sasha. Bye, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, Sound Broadcast here. Thanks for listening.